Okay, we're here to show you today how to install your new automatic shifter on a 2018 Jeep JL. Your new shifter will consist of the shift knob with your custom logo, painted in your custom color with the black adapter. There's actually what we call an inner shifter piece inside here, and you'll get a new zip tie. A couple of tools that you're going to need. You're going to need a pair of scissors, a 3/32 Allen wrench, a T25 Torx driver, a small screwdriver, and it comes in handy. The scissors may work, but a small pair of clippers or dikes, wire cutters. So the first step is going to be to remove the stock shifter. In order to do that, if we get this boot pulled up, we're going to find a small screw behind here, and we'll take that off, and then we can get this off. The boot actually comes off in between the kind of polished bezel and the actual leather boot. So you find it best, and the clips are one in front on each side and one in the rear back here. So it's almost best to kind of push in and up and see if you can get the one side to pop loose. And so I've got one whole side loose here. Now I should be able to easily get the other side loose. And again, you'll see a clip here, same in the front. So if we pull this up inside out a little bit up over the boot, we'll find that screw, and this is where the T25 Torx driver is necessary. Again, at the very end, just make sure that doesn't fall out into your console. We can set the screw aside. Now we should be able to pull up, just straight up on the shift knob, and it'll come off. Now the next process is going to be to get this boot loose so that we can reuse that. This is where the small screwdriver is going to come in handy. On either side, so the screw came out of the very back, on either side there's a small window with a little clip inside of it. So what we're going to try and do, what's going to happen is this collar piece is going to come off of this shaft, and then the boot will come with it. Our boot actually may not come because we've already kind of unattached it, but it looks like this when you take it apart for the very first time. So I'm going to push in on the clip on that side, try and move this up ever so slightly because the other side's still clipped, but we want the part that I pushed in to stay in. Then we got to do the same thing on the other side, and if they're both compressed, then the whole collar with boot will come off. Now again, we've taken this apart once before, but in general this boot is glued into the ring of this, and so you're going to gently peel it out all the way. Again, mine's not glued still, but yours will be. And you'll get that loose and the collar loose. You don't need the collar anymore. Now the next operation is just to make a little bit more room in this boot because it's awfully narrow to fit on the new shift adapter. We don't want to cut in the area where there's already threads and stitching because we don't want that to have a chance to come undone. So what we need to do is just ever so slightly with our pair of scissors, again, just maybe like 1/4 of an inch long on each side, opposite of the stitching. We're going to put a little slit, just enough, and you can try it on your shift knob to make sure that it's going to fit. Eventually you're going to put it together inside out, so I'm actually going to flip it inside out and attempt to slide it through there. So you just need to get it to where it's got enough relief in it where it wants to slide up onto this nicely. And you do want it to slide up pretty much. We're going to end up putting a zip tie in this area. There's kind of a groove on the shifter here, so we want to make sure it'll slide up that far to where our slits are just below it, and we're going to get a nice fit right around with the zip tie. We don't, however, want to zip tie it yet because we want to be able to get this on and make some adjustments. So the boot will be ready when it's time. Set that aside for now. We're going to talk about the actual shift knob that we're going to install. All right, so we're going to take our new shifter here, and we're actually going to disassemble it just a bit. What we want to do is go ahead and tighten this set screw that allows the slide adjustment to the point where it'll come out. You can set the actual shifter aside, and we'll work on the inner shifter here for a second. What we're going to do is take out this longer set screw. It should be in the middle where there's one right above it. And then we're going to take out actually one of the other two side short ones, and we're going to put it back in that hole for now. Now we're going to adjust all of those such that they're not sticking out from this surface, and they're also not sticking out to the inside surface. That way, it should be able to slide on to the actual Jeep shaft, and it should be able to slide into our shift knob. Okay? Now you can, again, set that aside for a moment. Come back to our boot. Make sure that you're familiar with the orientation on the boot. You'll see that even though it looks, it's got this kind of like, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's off and then back, but it actually does have a particular front and back. So this is actually backwards. That's not lining up and fitting here. So flip it 180 degrees and you'll see that the alignment's nice there. Don't clip it in at this point, but just get that alignment to where you know what's happening. If you'll notice, it's just a little bit longer here than it is here. So the longer section is what actually goes forward or towards the dash here. So with that orientation in mind, I'm gonna slip my new shift knob through the boot so that I have it somewhat positioned. Be careful not to mark your new paint job on the shaft or shifter. And we need to get to the point where we can see through this slot. Next, I'm going to take that inner shifter, and eventually we're going to have a long set screw in this middle position where there's another hole right above it, and we need that to line up with the slot in our shifter and at the same time have our logo in the correct orientation. So I know right now that my logo's out of phase. We actually want it more like this, with reference to how I want the boot to fit in back into the console. So now we've got the inner shifter on here and it's actually loose. I can spin it and it will kind of go all the way down. And we're going to come back to the outer shifter and we're going to slide it on to the point that it's just hanging kind of on its own weight to the very bottom. It should be able to push down again on the spring mechanism that allows the Jeep to shift. So once it's setting there on that free weight, and we want to pay attention to get the orientation correct here on our logo, we can slide that inner shifter up inside of it, and we got to know roughly where that screw is that we're going to try and tighten. So there's 3 around the bottom and 1 at the top. The one in the middle on the bottom, so directly below the other one on the top, that has one right above it, is the one we want to be able to tighten. And that's the one that eventually is going to fit through the slot in the outer shifter. So find kind of roughly where that's at, and we know roughly that it needs to be pointing towards the dash right now for this particular install. So I get the shifter on there to where I know that it's hanging on its own weight. I've got the orientation correct. Don't worry about the boot right now. We're going to be able to spin that because we haven't put the zip tie on. So I'm going to watch as I slide the inner shifter in up into my shaft, or outer shifter. I've got one set screw just a touch too far out, so I'm going to adjust that. And again, with that natural weight on there, put it up inside just to where you can see that set screw get through there. And then tighten it down. It doesn't have to be terribly tight right now. It's just going to hold on to the orientation for us. Now we can take off the outer shifter. We're going to tighten that 2 set screws that are still left in there. So there was one here to the side and that other one that was directly above. So now that we know that that's not going to move because I got 2 tight set screws, I'm going to actually take the other one out because that's where we need the long set screw. Put it back in the spot that I borrowed it from. Now make sure all of those are good and snug. Now we can find that longer set screw that we had set aside, kind of preloaded on the end of my Allen wrench. Get my outer shifter back. If I have the orientation kind of correctly, I should be able to look through the window and get the set screw to screw back into the inner shifter and tighten it all the way down so it tightens onto the shaft of the Jeep again. And make sure that's good and snug. And now, if we've done it right, the shifter should not have any slop kind of up and down. I shouldn't be able to pull it off. It won't come off anymore because that set screw is through that slot. And then I should be able to push it down. That's what's going to allow the Jeep to move from park into gear. The next step before we kind of button everything back up would be to test the functionality of the Jeep. So in that case, we're going to want to make sure we have our emergency brake on, foot on the brake, and then we can start the ignition, and we can attempt to shift from park to any gear and make sure that you do indeed have to depress the shift knob in order to move out of park and also to move from a gear back into reverse. Okay, so we've checked the functionality of the Jeep. It moves in and out of park as it should, and we're ready to button things up here. We're going to find that zip tie that you've been provided, and we're going to make sure that the boot is oriented correctly to go back into its position. So we want to kind of slide up our boot like we had talked about before, to where we're going to have those little slots on the side and get the boot kind of most of the way pulled up that we can. And then we're going to put this zip tie around. There is a groove in that shift adapter that we had provided, meant for this zip tie to fit kind of down inside of. So get the zip tie started, make sure it's going to line up and fall inside that groove. You can kind of see as I push on it here, it wants to fit inside the groove that I've got there. That's perfect. And I like to tighten it down so it's kind of right there in the back by the seam. Anywhere should work. It should be hidden by the boot anyway. Get that good and tight. So the boot pretty much wants to stay where I want it, but if I really needed to, I'll be able to move it a little bit. We'll come back with that small pair of wire cutters or scissors, trim the excess. Now gently just kind of fold your boot back to where it looks natural there, and line it up with the console and snap it back in. Installation's complete.